Hello everyone and welcome to my guide on how to do the 5th boss on the Sunwell Plateau for WoW TBC Classic. The 5th boss is Muru and Entropius. That's these two. Let's get into it. This is a chaotic 2-phase fight where you battle against a stationary Muru along with a slew of constantly summoned adds in Phase 1, shortly followed by a tight DPS race against Entropius in Phase 2. This is arguably the hardest boss in the entire expansion. Go into it with a plan of what your responsibilities are before ever pulling the boss. This will greatly reduce wipes and speed up clears. Phase 1 begins simply enough with just Muru alone in his room. He does not have a threat table and he does not move, but he does have a few abilities. The first ability is Negative Energy. This is a random beam attack that he will cast on 4 to 5 random targets every second that does around 1k damage each tick. This is unavoidable and just needs to be healed through. His next ability is Darkness. Every 45 seconds, he will cast Darkness that will cover the middle circle of his boss room with a Void Zone. This zone does ticking damage as well as puts a debuff on you that prevents any healing received for a few seconds. On top of that, Darkness also summons 8 Dark Fiends around its edge that if anyone touches will explode and deal raid-wide damage as well as put a dot on the raid for even more damage. Luckily, these Dark Fiends instantly die if they get purged or dispelled. A Shadow Priest can begin pre-casting a Mass Dispel on top of Muru a second after they see the darkness. This should line up well to instantly kill all of the Dark Fiends at once. While you are dealing with Muru, he will be summoning adds to help him. Every 60 seconds, Muru will summon 2 sets of 3 Humanoid adds each for a total of 6 adds. Each set of 3 adds has 2 Shadow Sword Berserkers and 1 Fury Mage in it. The adds spawn from opposite directions. One set spawns on the bridge leading up to the entrance to the room, and the other spawns deep into the hallway leading to Kil'jaeden. These adds cannot be hit until after they enter the boss room. However, as they are running in, they will build threat from Healing Arrow. 2 tanks will each be assigned to pick up a set of adds. They run very quickly and it will be difficult for the tanks to get snap threat on them, but all adds are CCable, which helps. We will be making use of Hunter Frost Traps to slow the adds and let the tanks pick them up. The Berserkers have a Flurry ability that increases attack speed and movement speed by 100%. When they have this buff up, they hit very hard, so tanks and healers watch out. The Fury Mages will spam cast Fell Fireballs that need to be interrupted so tanks can stack up the adds. The Fury Mages will also cast Spell Fury on themselves, which makes their cast instant, do 50% more damage, and makes them unable to move. This needs to be purged or spell stolen immediately. This buff seems tempting to be spell stolen by mages since it can be a nice DPS increase. However, mages do a lot of moving for this fight and they don't always want to be stuck in place. What is more important is that the buff gets taken off of the add, so if anyone can purge or dispel the buff before a mage can spell steal it, then so be it. The next add that Muru will summon is the Void Sentinel. Every 30 seconds, Muru will open up a portal at a random location along the walls of the boss room. A few seconds after the portal opens, a Sentinel will spawn. They have a Shadow Pulse that does pulsing AoE damage to anyone close to it for around 4k damage, so tank these away from the raid. Sentinels also have a Void Blast, which does around 10 to 11k damage. This hits incredibly hard, but it can be stopped by a Shaman's Grounding Totem. One Shaman should be enough to stop every Void Blast. Remember that the Sentinel will be tanked outside of the raid, so the Shaman may need to move in range of the tank before dropping the totem. Along with these abilities, Void Sentinels also melee hit extremely hard, so a Shadow Resistance tank is not really feasible. Each melee hits for around 9k damage. Sentinels can be slowed, so if melee damage on that tank is too much to keep up with, then the tank can slowly kite the Sentinel around a Hunter Frost Trap to reduce damage output. Finally, once a Void Sentinel dies, it will summon 8 Void Spawns. Have a pally tank the Sentinels so that they will already be in position to pick up the spawns when they appear. The spawns can also be CC'd, so we will use Mage Novas to lock them in place while the pally tank gathers threat. The Void Spawns do not melee hit very hard, but what they do have is a Shadow Bolt Volley. This volley hits anyone within 20 yards for around 1.5k damage. Tank the spawns away from the raid, just like the Sentinel, and have range to turn and kill them quickly. Each spawn only has around 30k health. A special note for Warlocks on this fight is that the Void Spawns can and should be enslaved. Each Void Spawn does incredible amounts of damage throughout the fight, so each Warlock should enslave one as soon as the first set appears. Locks should make an enslave macro to raid marker which one you are enslaving so DPS don't accidentally kill it. An example of a raid marker macro looks like this. Just change the number at the end to the corresponding raid marker you would like. Talk with the other locks to make sure that you are all using different icons. It is very important to keep your Void Spawn alive throughout the fight since they do so much damage. Pet management will be needed, so Void Spawns don't die to Sentinel Shadow Pulse or the Darkness from Muru. Almost all of the enslaved damage will come from Shadow Volley. They do not melee for much, so if they keep dying, then just put them on follow and have them volley a clump of ads. Talk to your hunter friends for better pet management tips. But if they say just tonk it, then kick them. Positioning for phase 1 will look like this. The range will stack on triangle, while melee will hop between skull and triangle depending on if darkness is up or not. Muru is stationary on skull this whole phase. Humanoid ads will spawn outside of the boss area and run to star and square. One tank will be assigned to the ads on square and another tank will pick up star ads. The humanoid tanks should stack the ads on top of skull for cleave whenever darkness is not up, and whenever darkness is up, stack them on triangle with the rest of the raid. Sentinels can spawn anywhere along the very crudely drawn red lines. When it spawns, the pally tank should pick them up and move them to X on whichever side is closest. One Hunter Frost Trap will be placed at the entrance and another just inside the edge of the darkness to help slow ads before they reach the raid. Finally, mages will move and Frost Nova on X whenever the void spawns appear. The pally tank will tank the spawns where they are at on X. Here is another look at the boss room. Star ads spawn below the picture in the hallway leading to Kill Jaden. Square ads spawn on the bridge outside of the entrance. As I said before, this is a chaotic fight where everyone has different roles. I will start with some generalities of the phase before going over specific assignments. First and foremost, phase 1 is an ad fight. Ads before boss almost always. If you can control the ads, you can control the fight. Other than that, phase 1 is simple from an explanation standpoint. Phase 1 lasts until Muru is killed. Getting a clean transition into phase 2 is very important, so listen to the stop and start DPS calls on Muru carefully. Bring Muru down to less than 5% HP, then focus down all of the remaining ads. Once there is a break in the ads, finish off Muru. Now let's get into the nitty-gritty details of specific assignments, starting with the humanoid tanks. These tanks need to watch their timers and be in position before the ads arrive. The timers show not when the ads spawn, but when they enter the boss room. This means that they had already spawned a few seconds earlier and are running into the boss room before the timer ends. The tank at the entrance needs to pick up the ads immediately as they enter the room. They are much closer to the range stack, so you can't let any get past. The tank on the star side can wait near Muru. Once the ads spawn, pick up the 2 berserkers as they run past Muru. The Fury Mage will spawn and may cast 1 fireball into melee. Do not interrupt this cast if she does it. After that, a healer should have picked up aggro on her and she will begin running towards the stack group to get in range. Pick her up when she is near Muru and starts to cast again. This is when interrupts should begin on the Fury Mage. If darkness is up, then the tank assigned to star should wait on the edge of the darkness on top of the hunter trap. Pick up the ads as they run through the hunter trap before they can reach the raid. You will have little time to pick up these ads since it is so close to the raid. Call out for extra interrupts if Fury Mages are ever not stacked with the other ads. Next is the Void Sentinel tank. This tank will be the pally tank to pick up the void spawns when the Sentinel dies. Like the humanoid ads, the timer shows when the Sentinel will spawn inside of the room, but the portal that summons the Sentinels spawns a few seconds before that. Scan the walls of the room and look out for the portal. When a portal spawns, move underneath it to pick up the Sentinel immediately. Healers will have threat on it, so being ready to pick it up as it spawns is important. There are little corners in the room on either side of the X marker that you can use for positioning. Get ready to pick up the void spawns as soon as the Sentinel dies. Keep the spawns on X as long as possible. Depending on DPS, it is possible that void spawns are still alive when the next Void Sentinel portal opens up. If that happens, still run to the new portal, even if it means running spawns through the raid. Healers can handle a couple shadow volleys going into the raid, but they cannot handle a Sentinel in the raid. New Sentinel positioning is more important than void spawn positioning. One tip for pally tanks is that they can precast a Holy Wrath just as the Sentinel is dying to quickly pick up the void spawns. Holy Wrath won't be up for every single Sentinel death, but it can help for a few sets of void spawns. Next, let's talk about healer assignments. A lot of Sunwell is about healer trust, and this boss is the best example of it. Keep your assignments and make sure that tanks stay alive above all else. This is a long fight with constant damage throughout. Mana management will be important since phase 2 has a lot of healing required. Use lull periods in the fight where there are no ads to regen mana. Watch out for the Berserker's Flurry buff since they hit the tanks very hard. The Holy Pally should spam big heals into the Sentinel tank since they will take massive chunks of damage. Use your threat dropping abilities like Fade or maybe even Tranquil Air Totem to help the tanks with aggro. Healers should also spec into threat reduction talents like Silent Resolve, Healing Grace, and Subtlety if you are not already spec'd that way. Resto Shamans throw interrupts into the Fury Mages if you have a free GCD, and remember to drop grounding totems for the pally tank if they are in your group. Next are melee assignments. Melee kill priority is humanoid ads, then lastly Muru. Always focus the ads first, since if the ads are dead, then that means less damage for the healers, and it also means that more DPS can focus the boss. Cleave onto Muru whenever the ads are stacked. Even though Muru doesn't move, He can parry, so make sure to stand behind him. He is always facing the entrance of the room. Watch your timers and move before darkness is cast. Enhanced Shamans focus the Fury Mages for purges and interrupts. And finally, watch your threat on adds since tanks will have a hard time picking up all 3 adds at once. Last but not least, let's talk about the ranged assignments. Ranged kill priority is Void Sentinel, then Void Spawns, then Humanoid adds, then Muru. All ranged focus Sentinels. Kill them as quickly as possible. Aside from that, do whatever your class does best. If there are a lot of adds, then AoE. If you are a class that does not do good AoE, then choose an appropriate target for your class. For example, Hunters shouldn't worry too much about the Void Spawns since there are 8 of them that die too quickly before you can get any meaningful damage off. But Locks should be seeding the Void Spawns immediately. There is some personal responsibility here, so use your head to decide what the best target for you is. This is the one fight where Parse Mentality is actually helpful. Do what will be the best DPS for your class while also bringing the most benefit to the raid. Keep in mind that damage on Muru is the lowest on priority. The one range class that has it easy is Shadow Priests. They should just stay on Muru the entire fight for better mana regen. The ad should die quick enough that a Shadow Priest switching targets will only lose DPS. Hunters and Locks should be careful of pet management. There is a lot of AoE happening with Shadow Pulses, Shadow Volleys, and the Darkness, so try to keep your pets alive. Hunters especially have a hard time with mana on this fight. Chug those mana pots since there will not be a good target with Wisdom on it for very long. Also, remember to place your Frost Traps at the assigned spot whenever the Humanoid adds spawn. Mages, make sure to Frost Nova the Void Spawns as they appear to help the Pally tank. Mages will be assigned to interrupt specific Fury Mage adds. One mage will be assigned to Square and another to Star. Any other interrupts will follow after the mage's counterspell. After everyone has learned the fight and does their assignments correctly, you will successfully push Muru and begin Phase 2. Phase 2 is much simpler than Phase 1 in that you only fight Entropius during it. Entropius' first ability is Negative Energy. Much like Phase 1, this is cast out at random targets and needs to be healed through. But in Phase 2, it becomes a Chain Lightning that can bounce twice and does reduced damage with each bounce. Over time, this slowly hits more and more people and acts as a soft enrage for Phase 2. Sooner or later, your healers will not be able to keep up with the damage. Darkness now spawns little void zones underneath people's feet. Move out immediately because it does damage and a single Dark Fiend is about to spawn from it. Anyone with a Purge, Dispel, or Spellsteal needs to focus these down. His last spell is Singularity, which is a hard to see purple and bluish ball that will spawn around the room. After a few seconds, it will begin moving towards random people. Run away from it or you will be sucked in and unable to move or attack for its duration, as well as take ticking shadow damage. Once Muru dies, there is a 10-second transition before Phase 2. Use that time to clean up any extra adds that may be alive. After that, loosely spread out based on your groups on one side of the boss. We have 4 ranged groups, so we will have Hunters loosely spread on X, Mages on Square, Healers on Star, and Locks on Triangle. Only one tank is needed for this phase, so pump all MDs into the main tank and position Entropius in the center of the room. Phase 2 is entirely a DPS race against negative energy, so pop all remaining cooldowns and Bloodlust as soon as it begins. Avoid Darkness Void Zones on the ground and purge the Dark Fiends quickly. Run away from Singularities if it is coming after you, but if one spawns in melee, do not move the boss unless it is going to hit the tank. Try to keep the boss centered and in range of the healers as much as you can. If DPS is high enough, then you will beat Phase 2. As I said before, this is arguably the hardest boss in the entire expansion. Everyone has a bunch of different roles and responsibilities, and it will take the entire raid executing them well to overcome it. Focus on what your responsibilities are, and trust that the rest of your raid members will do the same. If everyone does that, then this boss will fall. Thanks for watching, and I will see you again in my next video for the next boss in Sunwell Plateau. Good luck out there, everybody.